Everybody. Just taking care of something on my screen here, and then I'll get right to it. Continuing on, which I've been working on for the last, well, on the lives for the last month or so, but in real life, I checked. I started this a year ago, and the only time I can make progress lately is on these lives, so I'm just going to continue on. I was just going to doodle because it's been pretty busy and stressful at work lately, but then I thought, why not make some actual progress on this thing and just keep going. So I'm going to start up here on the mountain. And if people have questions about what I'm doing or other drawing, landscape drawings they're struggling with, just comment and I'll get going with it. And if I get bored or fatigued of working on this, maybe I'll switch over to the trees down here, or if there's something easy I can help with on one of the drawing questions, maybe I'll switch over and do that. But other than that, I'm just going to get going here. So I have my reference image right here, as I always do, and then I also have it on my screen here, just for a higher resolution view. But on this mountain here, the details are so small that it's kind of just a lot of little dots and marks. See if I can get it so the light doesn't reflect it funny. So it's really just paying attention to all those tiny details and really getting in. And then as you zoom back, all those details come together and reveal the different sections of the mountain. But when you get into it, it's just basically drawing a bunch of little dots. And you can see I use my reference grids here. I have a download of this on my Patreon page under the free membership if you want. You can apply it in Photoshop, or somebody a couple weeks ago was mentioning other applications you can use it in. But I'm trying to get the details so accurate. I actually break those 1 by 1 inch squares into further quarters, just so I can have everything line up perfectly. So with that, I'm going to get to it here. I got a HB pencil in hand. Just trying to line it up so I can see, and then you guys can see. Okay, let's see where we're at. So I drew a little arrow here. It's kind of partially off screen, but this is the little section we're working on. So just getting in there, and all these little rocks and things you're just kind of doing little dots, but in order to draw, I want this, I've mentioned this on other lives, I want people, lots of people know Mt Rainier so well, they know all the little different sections of it. Hey, Isaac John, how's it going? Thanks for watching, and hopefully as I draw this, it's not like watching paint dry, but for realistic drawing, that's kind of the way it is when you're trying to get all these tiny little details. I'm starting off a little light with this HB pencil, then I'll probably go over it again. Even though you couldn't possibly get all the details of these little rocks right, I do want some just super subtle variation, because when they all come together and you zoom out, you get a little hint of that. Hey Doug, good to see you. Thanks for joining. Hope you're doing well. So yeah, here's where I'm at. Hi Lizeth, thanks for watching and joining us. If you have any questions, anybody, drop them down. I'll pause and answer questions either on this drawing, or if you have other landscapes you're struggling with, just shout them out. And I've worked on this for a few weeks here on these lives. I always get nervous. People get tired of it. So if I get tired of it, I'll just switch over. Now that a few more people on, Lizeth, this is a drawing of Mt Rainier based off of a photo I took. So here's where I'm at. I got this small section over here that I gotta finish, and with the tutorials, with my channels tutorials, this is kind of the majority of the working time I have on it. And once people start saying, "Hey, Eric, do you ever work on anything else?" I'll know that's my cue to move on to something else on these lives. But until that point, I got to take my chances when I can to make some progress on this. How many days? That's a tough question to answer. I started on it. I was checking through some old photos on my phone for a different photo, and I started this last April, not a month ago April, like 2024 April. But between my day job and for the last 6 months or so, I've been working on all my landscape tutorials. It's really on the back burner. 20. Thanks, Doug. Yeah, 2022 is about. It's not all stippled. No, some sections are, like for the trees in particular, but the mountain and some of the grasses, I am drawing lines occasionally, but a lot of it, with these small details, just kind of by the nature of it, you kind of have to be, a little bit of that stippled dot look and application to create it. But like in these shadows areas, I'm just drawing lines in. But for tree texture, drawing it stippled like that is a good technique to get the look down, especially with this scale. But you could always just draw it bigger. I feel like sometimes I like to make it as hard as possible on myself by drawing. It's so tiny, but what can you do? Inch by inch gets closer to being done. Yes, I've thought about, I'm thinking about in June potentially going live every day and just trying to make a little progress every day. I think people will get super tired of it, but I think that's like kind of the only way I can make myself finish this. Down here, there's this little mountain section. Where am I? So this is what I'm working on. I'm trying to just get these slight variations in the value here. But I normally would work under a magnifying glass, but and I try to set it up, but the phone is in the way. So it's a little bit of a tight squeeze. But I'm just trying to go over here with some lighter values, then I'm going to go in with darker values and kind of create the little, different faces of this mountain, this rock. But it's just so small that you really got to go as incremental as possible, which makes it take a really long time, which that is really the key to realistic drawing. It's just being patient with it and not rushing it. And as Doug mentioned, if you start a drawing in 2022 and it's 2025 and you're not done, that's being pretty patient. Oh, Doug, how close am I getting to the new camera? Well, it's a tough... not very close. But that's okay. I mean, my current camera works. It's like 10 years old, 12 years old. So there are some features that I wish I had that I don't, which will help make the quality a little better. But it gets the job done. Okay. So now I got a 2B pencil here. The lead on this one is a little bit thicker. I want to see if I can get in and just sort of carve out some shadows. Let's see if you guys can see that. Soften this a little bit more. Okay. So like the over here is getting a little bit of light, and then on this side, there's some shadows coming in that you can see it curve around the rock here. Might be kind of hard to show up with the lights, but maybe it's coming through. Erasing at this scale is really hard though, so I gotta just be really intentional, and again, it's kind of like just that stippling effect where I'm just putting little dots in. You can, it's somewhat showing up on camera. It's hard to see with, no worries, Doug. No worries. It'll happen, you know, it's just a matter of, again, taking my time to get there and save up. How's your drawing coming, Doug? This is just a little eraser I like to use because you can be super accurate with it, and I can just do little taps. Again, I'm just sort of lightening that layer up. Everyone leave? Probably. This isn't the most exciting drawing to watch, but again, at this point, I might be doing these lives more because it's the way to get progress done. And if it gets boring, I'll just switch down to the trees. People seem to like when I draw the trees. Let's see. Just gotta darken a little. Getting these little tiny details and being able to see them sort of come through at this scale is tough, but when I pull back, it's easier to recognize them. And also the light is reflecting the graphite a little funny. Threw it out, went to the pic. I'll send you later. It's a waterfall from before I met you. Yeah, cool. Yeah, if you want, send it over. I'd love to look at it, but you know, it's up to you. But yeah, I'd love to check it out. Let's see where we're at here. So there's all these little sort of light little, I don't know if they're rocks or shadows in the snow. I just like to throw in some of those. The thing you got to be careful of, even though these seem like random little dots on my reference image, they are all, you can see they're all following, I have my paper cut off. You can see there's a slope of snow here, so there's probably like a little sort of valley where the rocks, somehow the snow is piling up here with nothing interrupting it. So they do kind of line up and match up. And you want to follow all those little indicator lines so you get the slope of the mountain right. And if you just throw out some randomly sometimes without any sort of direction to them, sometimes it'll make things feel off. So I just like to put in those little hints that show that slope. And also they add to just like the level of detail here. Of course, sometimes they are just randomly placed in there, but if you have too many of them that are sort of going the opposite direction of the slope, you might ask why things feel a little funny. Okay, now you can see my grid lines in there. So I sharpened this on some sandpaper. Just take those out. Ideally, they'd kind of get covered up with your drawing, but there's so much snow covering the mountain here. So it's kind of just going step by step like that. I want to catch a little more light on the right side of these. I want people to be able to sort of look at this and almost, not that they would use it as a map, but they could if they wanted to. Okay, so we're going down to this next section. Got a little bit too attached to it. Thought everything was good, but then stepped back. The ears were way overdone. Erased too many times. Yeah, hey, I've been there. You keep on trying to make something out of a drawing and you realize it's just best to start over. Just want to show the, if anybody hasn't been here in a while, here's where we're at. You can see like, what's cool, of course, it's hard when you see it as I'm drawing live, but like, so these are little tree line. This is the shadows of trees, and that's the shadow it's being cast down. You get all these little, if it'll focus here, all these little ridges. Boy, I'm having some trouble focusing. But when you work on it step by step, it doesn't look like much. I wonder if this camera is dirty. Just one detail at a time. What part did you do first? I just kind of started, well, I did this gradient on the sky first, just because that was the easiest way to get started. Then I started on the trees, and the trees are much easier than the mountaintop. That's why I normally focus on the trees on the lives, because it doesn't take quite as much focus. This part takes quite a bit of focus, and it's a lot more work of getting into a rhythm. So normally I focus on the trees. That's why I have the trees done. I have trees done out a couple more inches, because I kind of avoid drawing the mountain because it's a lot harder. Let's see here. Okay. Just getting situated. And here's where, this is the one we're drawing right here, which just looks like a bunch of blobs, but again, when you step back, there's a lot more to it. So we'll see. I'll just probably start this and then I'll move on to trees, because you guys can see a lot more progress there. I just don't think people are going to enjoy watching me draw this. So again, I'm going to start out lighter with, I'm going to start with a 2H pencil here on these lighter areas. And then I'll go back in and carve in our shadows with the HB and 2B pencil. You can see I outlined, I kind of take the steps of, I break these 1 inch by 1 inch squares. I break it down in a quarter so I can get all these tiny details. Then I outline the main features, and now I go in and layer my different values on it, just to really break it down step by step. And sort of increase that chance of, increase the chance for success. What brand name is your lead holder? My lead holder. What do you mean by my lead holder? My pencil. Oh, these are Pentel. These are the pencils I use. The blue tape I have on some of them, I just marked the lead in them. But it's all this Graph Gear, Pentel, and in the description on this video and a lot of my other videos, it has my Blix affiliate link where I do make a small commission. But it has all the pencils I use, because I also use these. But, you know, as Doug, I know you know, I'm a big mechanical pencil guy because I have the problem of always getting hyper focused on details, and sometimes to my own detriment, especially like in my tutorials where I could make the tutorials more efficiently if I would start with a traditional pencil. But I always have a tendency to sort of dig into the details first, and that's usually not the approach you want to take. This is all darker shadow in here, so I'm going to leave that for now. See, with outlining it ahead of time before I come in here, I can just sort of turn my brain off when it comes to shading these things in, which really helps on these lives. These lives, it's a lot to juggle, to draw, and then I want to make sure, not just talking, but answering any questions you guys have. What's everybody drawing? Does anybody have any landscape drawing questions specific to them or specific to yourself? If they're easy, I can switch off this and see if I can help, or I can just keep drawing. If it's more complicated, I might have to put a little more thought into it. The next tutorial I'm working on is, I've said it on the last live, it's how to draw rapids and rivers, which I've been working on. And the issue I'm running into is condensing it down into a step-by-step rather than like a super elaborate 3-hour process. Is directional shading real? What do you think? Yeah, I think it's real. I think it depends on sort of your drawing style, or even how you want to the look and feel of the current drawing you're working on. But I think it depends on if you're sort of applying it, how you're applying it in your specific drawing. Just going a little bit darker here with my HB pencil, starting to add in some of these shadows. The sun is hitting the only certain parts of the mountain here. I also really like to get, there's one small little patch of snow. I like to get those tiny details because it also just breaks up this blob of shadow. Adds a little interest to it. But the mountain here is sort of sloping down like this, so I'm just carrying the shadows down in that direction. I can't really blend things with the blending tool here because it'll just turn into mush. So you really have to just be intentional with all your little lines. Boy, on the camera, really, it's, let's see how this does. It's very hard to see. But like right through here is where the sun is sort of hitting one side and not the other. So that's what I'm working on. So then after the river and rapids video, somebody put in a request for how to draw a tornado, which I've never drawn. I'm excited to. I have a few different ideas of how to do it, but I've never drawn one before. Have you heard of Lake Success? No. What is that? This is a 2B pencil. I'm going a little bit darker here, so you can see just incrementally getting darker. Again, so I can watch it step by step, because if I erase here, it's basically starting the square over. And that's when you would start to hear me cry. And I don't want to cry on camera. If you're familiar with Photoshop, we're just kind of essentially doing Photoshop layers here, getting darker and darker, layering on top of each other. Or, like, you know, it's similar to painting when you layer colors on top. Another one of those little snowy little patches right here. If you need a really good eraser, this one, highly recommend it. You can see I was pushing pretty hard with my 2B pencil there, and it took it clear off. You know, it's not to say if you did it over and over, you wouldn't wear through your paper eventually, but a camping area in the mountains here, up in about an hour and a half drive. The mountains, where are you again, Doug? I have a few camping trips lined up. I don't normally draw out in nature, but I was going to record some videos doing it. It'll be kind of a learning process for me. I've done it, it's so much easier at home. And I normally focus more on taking photos, reference photos, and bringing them back, but it's going to sort of talk about, you know, my approach to sort of seeing things differently when you photograph things, what I'm looking for in terms of how it relates to drawing them. So now we're getting darker again as the mountain slopes down the backside of this shadowy area. Graphite is causing some real tough reflections. Let me see if I can switch that. Son has taken us camping for Father's Day, so I'll definitely bring back a lot of photos. Yeah, camping on the mountain. So I'm originally from Minnesota, and we moved to Washington State a couple of years ago. And I've camped in the mountains before, but I'm doing it a lot more now. And it's a lot of fun to camp out, especially when you get out there and be that remote. In Minnesota, there's a great spot called the Boundary Waters, which I used to go to. But it was all, you had to canoe everywhere, which I liked, but you wake up on the wrong day, or it's too late and it's windy and you're canoeing on some big lakes, bad things can happen. So I mostly prefer to hike. So I have a few of those lined up that I'll be sharing, and I'll have taken a lot of photos, and I'll be sharing reference photos from my trips and talking about, you know, how I'm seeing different textures and thinking about how I would draw them. I was going to have make some videos for it, and then have the reference images to download on Patreon, again, under the free membership at this point. But that way people can sort of see my thought process and then go and try to apply it and get more. One of my goals is to get more active on that Patreon page. But seeing as I'm kind of behind on the YouTube page tutorials, it's a lot of work. Okay, maybe I'll switch to trees here, unless people want to see more of this, but you're kind of continuing on all the way through like that, trying to get that light to not reflect off it. And then you build those intricate patterns so you can get, here's like a smaller version of one. But they're all throughout here, or like, where's a pencil? You can see just the small little variations. Here's a little mountain coming up. But the full effect is when you pull back. And let's see if, let me see in the reference image here. So this is the section I was drawing. But yeah, let's do some trees here so people can see something develop. Mind-boggling. Yeah, sometimes I look back and I think, how did I do that? But step by step. Okay. I'll start on a new section of trees. Let's make it one that I like to do these top ones for you guys because you can actually see these tops develop, which make it more interesting to look at from the get-go. When you get down into here, you can't always see where these trees extend down into. So let me find my spot in my reference image here. And for the trees, I do look at my reference image, but I'm not as big on getting everything exact here because that would be nearly impossible. I more just want to make sure I get the lighting right and I get the scale right. But this is just the common process I show. It's that same layering process. I start with an HB pencil and then I'm go with a 2B and just go on top of each other, essentially making little dots. Let's see if I can get in here. So we're right there. Okay, need a little bit more room here. Maybe that's good. Okay, so this is the one I'm working off of, but again, I'm sort of following the shape, but I'm not super concerned about getting it 100%. It's more of an inspiration type of situation. Just little taps. This is controlled scribbling here. Somebody a few weeks ago called it controlled chaos, which is exactly right. You just want to make sure your lines are going in the direction of your branches, because again, when you do that, I'm going to be making hundreds and hundreds of little lines here. On an individual level, you might not notice, but when they all come together, that cumulative effect of everything, that's when all those little details come and shine through. And I'll probably go back and tidy up that little section of mountain when I can see it a little better. But it's mostly like that is to draw realistically. That's sort of the process. Well, at this scale, but it's that attention to detail where like I think that was 35 minutes, and kind of maybe that was like half inch by an inch of drawing. And if I go back in and finesse it even more, I mean, that's the attention to detail you kind of have to have. But of course, drawing it a little bigger would make it easier, but who wants it to be easy? Plus, I actually want to be able to I have it at a scale where I can frame it and put it on the wall, so. Okay, but now it's just sort of doing this little dance. I'm looking at my reference image again as inspiration, but just sort of keep it in line with trees, and I'll fill in those shadows somewhat accordingly. If they get off, I'm not too concerned, but it's mostly just you want to mimic the scale and the direction of all these branches on these evergreen trees here, on all these fir trees. You can see here though, it's as compared to the drawing on the mountain before, you can really get into just a nice rhythm. It's boring, but it doesn't take nearly the focus. But I think that's part of, again, the drawing is so much about patience and not rushing it. And once I have this finished, you know, forcing myself to take this much time on every 1 by 1 inch square and then looking at the full drawing together, that's when you're like, holy cow. That's when like Doug, you mentioned mind-boggling. That's when you kind of step back and say, I don't even know how I did that. But it's one tiny stroke at a time with the pencil. If I didn't mention, this is HB pencil. That's what I do with this first layer here. Some of the other sections, there's more light hitting the trees, so I start off with a 2H pencil. I also like, you know, we're drawing this small, a lot of those details blend together. So I'm using this 0.3 pencil, but I also like it when the tip of it dulls a little bit, so it blends and blurs a little bit. I think that, again, when I go over with my 2B, helps sort of blend all those shadows together, because at this scale, you're not going to see things super sharp. It's going to have a little bit of that blending. And if I use this sharper tip, I'm going to get really definitive branches and shadows. And, you know, if you look on here, where am I? You're not getting anything super sharp. Maybe some of these highlights, but like these shadows they all get a little bit muddy. So that's using that, even at 0.3 millimeter lead, trying to be strategic about using that duller spot. Now, if you work on trees a little larger, I would probably still do that. I think, unless you're doing like a tight shot of it, drawing a tight shot of a tree where you're seeing individual lines, I normally try to keep it, just give it that little sort of slight muddiness to it. Again, that just helps create that illusion of it coming together. And also, I think a lot of the times people may struggle a little bit drawing nature and landscapes because they get a little too rigid. And you always got to remember, you know, nothing is like keep things wild is what I'm trying to say when you're drawing landscapes. If everything you get into a rhythm of drawing grass and everything is perfectly straight and parallel, it's not going to be as realistic. You want that organic factor. So again, having some of your shadows in particular sort of muddy and come together is good. Unless, again, you're drawing like a close-up shot or like a high detail shot where the tree is like you're seeing individual leaves. Oops. Being random is good, and just sort of letting your pencil dance a little bit. See, hopefully that picked up. But you can see these lines get sharper after my lead broke because I haven't dulled that lead. It's not going to be a problem doing it a little bit, but if I did it over a large stretch, it's going to be too sharp. And there are ways to fix that, but it's best to know it before you get in there. So I'm just kind of filling up this entire 1x1 inch square, and then with the 2B pencil I can go in and define my shadows and give these, you know, here's a tree, shape them out a little bit more. But for right now, I'm just got my brain off a little bit and just filling up these squares with the texture. I feel like for landscapes, texture is like the biggest, having some lead problems here, the thing that I focus on with the most. Because like with scale, you can get away with your scale being off a little bit. Hold on one second here. Got a lead, my lead's jammed. You can get away with your scale being off. If you're drawing wildlife, obviously it's different, but for me, texture is so important because that is texture, contrast, your shadows, getting all that right is big, and they all are work in unison together. Layering your values to create contrast, which creates that texture. Sorry for their, I had like 3 little pieces of lead stuck in there and I couldn't get it out. Yeah, just being super random, and then when I go back with my 2B, I can really carve out these trees accordingly. I'm keeping the trees sort of in mind here, like this is one, but down here, a lot of the trees that start up here are going to continue down into this square. So I'm really just filling the square with texture. And I like to work in 1x1 inch squares like this because you can see how long it takes. I can then set like a daily goal of 1 square, although I haven't been achieving that lately. But besides allowing me to match my reference image closely, it kind of creates an easy way to set up goals for myself. I can tell I'm getting lazy here. I'm not picking up my pencil as much. But make sure not to let your pencil, be sure to pick your pencil up. You want these to be individual little squiggles and lines. And you want to ever so slightly vary your pressure, so you get a little bit of variation in those values. You can see up here it's a little darker. That's more important as we add in our 2B pencil next. That's where things really come together more, like over on these other ones. Although again, it's a little hard to see, but I'll show you an example in a second. I just want to fill up the square, and then I can take a little break with these dots. Another more intricate squares I'll be a little more thoughtful about how I'm laying out my highlights and shadows, but this one is basically, this one is all pretty dark. Whoops, where are we at? This one's all pretty dark. Okay, so I'm gonna switch to my 2B, but you can see the 2B is where you really, see now I can carve out these shadows and add in. This is essentially the layer I just laid down, and I'm gonna do the 2B pencil over it, similar to like what I got going on over here. So it takes a little more focus than what I just did. I don't just want to fill in the whole square, because if I do that, I'm just gonna turn into a big blob. And there's one tree trunk in there. It's, let me see if I can show it. I want to make sure I get that in there. Not that it's super important, but it's just, that's that level of detail where you put in like a little thing like that. And, you know, it just shows the focus of how much detail you put in. And adds to creating that forest effect, you know, and if you're out in nature, you would see details like that. So I want to make sure they continue on here. But again, I'm essentially doing what I did with the HB pencil, picking it up. I'm leaving little bits of that HB behind, showing through. This is pretty shadowy up here, so I'm putting a little bit more than some other areas. But having that little bit of HB shows the depth in our trees. Lost track of the combo. I had to take headphones off to answer the phone. Just don't go too far with the details. Yeah. Doug, I think it's too late for me to not go too far on the details. But yeah, so leaving that little bit of HB, even at this scale, again, you're getting that little hint of the texture of our evergreen trees. And again, I'm working with I'm trying to dull it a little so they become a little bit muddied, and that way I don't have to use a blending tool. I kind of want them to muddy and blend together without having to use that. Yeah, I'm a bit of a details guy. Which sometimes I just got to pull my head out of that, because, especially on the tutorials, I'll do tutorial on, like the waterfall tutorial. I spent more time drawing the background than on the waterfall. And I need to, of course, context is so important on water. Have you used it? Maybe just a little bit, but as opposed to like going all over, it'd basically be like this, right? It's because you go much beyond that, and this is like the smallest one I have. But if you go too far, all that work you put in is gonna get smudged together, which can be handy in other applications, but it's not what I want to do here. There's one really dark tree in here I want to get. It's like right in here. So this tree is all, well, not all, but it's mostly made up of, must be getting no lights tucked back in. So I'm letting my pencil drag just a little bit more. Wiped out more like it, I think. Yeah, for sure. So I just want to get that really dark tree in here, and have these kind of lightened up behind it. Hopefully that's coming through. A little hard to see. Down here is just a shadowy patch. So all these little shadows are, you know, obviously there's trees sticking out further, catching the light, and then little gaps in the forest where little shadow areas occur. So in those spots, you can let your pencil drag, but even if you leave little dots behind, it's good because there are still branches in there. They're just not getting much sun. So you don't necessarily have to fill it in completely. But I just want to make sure I have some of that, you know, triangle evergreen shape going on here. But you get a little bit right there. You see, like there's a top, and it goes down. It's going to continue down into here. Here's that shadowy tree tucked back in the forest. And then a little bit shadowy down here, and then it comes up to these trees getting a little bit more sun up here. Super small, tiny marks. Unless you're drawing a larger, unless your scale is larger. I'm kind of causing my own pain here because I drew this so small, but again, I have a spot on the wall to put it, so this is what it had to be. But you can see, well, it's hard to see on here, but there's just that little bit of texture, all just made up from HB and a 2B and little dots. Then it gets shadowy down here again. And then here's where a new tree kind of pops up. So I'm going to sort of mark it in, and then I'm going to build my shadows around it. And you can, if you get too dark, you can use an eraser in here. I'll show you that in a second. Just so you know, there is room for error here if you mess up. I want this to be a little bit lighter. This tree appears to be getting a little bit more light. And then it sticks out in front of this one. But like if this was too dark, again with this Faber-Castell, I like these erasers because they don't erase super well. You can just take off that top layer. Just little dabs, just like our marks would make. You just do little dabs. See how it just ever so slightly lighten that up. But you wouldn't want to use like this electric eraser or anything like that. There's another lighter tree up here. It's kind of like, you know how the tops of the trees are getting light, and then as they go down, the next tree down sort of in the forest canopy, or the forest is sticking up over the bottom of the tree. Again, if you're drawing landscapes, going out into nature can help you a lot, just in terms of if you work off reference images, understanding what you're seeing, and understanding how sort of the light plays. But the main thing, just keep it sort of, once you understand how the light is going to react to the forest, keeping it random is good. I don't want it to feel like I'm making a pattern of any kind. A little bit of shadow where these two trees come together. All the branches overlap. a little hard to see, but controlled scribbling, that's all this is. I'm just going to finish off this little section. I want to get the tree trunk in. There's like a white branch of some kind showing. I mentioned earlier, I want to make sure I get that in so you guys can see how I do that. And then I'll probably call it, unless somebody has... What weight is that paper you're using? Oh, I'd have to check on that. It's pretty heavy. It's pretty, let me see here. I'll have to check on that, Doug. I can't quite see it. Yeah, 4 people in here. You know, small games. Essentially at this, I mean, I've showed this process so many times. I'm surprised 4 people are in here. But I'm glad you're in here, Doug. It's me and you. Yeah, what are your plans for the weekend, Doug? Anything? Kind of turned into a jumbled mess there, but it's pretty dark over here on this side of my reference image. Okay, left it a little sloppy down here. Let's fill this in a little bit. Oops, I'm kind of off here. Got a little muddy. Just open that up a little. Tap, tap. Draw, draw. Yeah, I gotta get this river tutorial out. I just can't, you know, I've drawn I got a couple things. I got to get over to REI for some camping gear myself. Then this river rapids tutorial. I need to get a process down that I can explain succinctly. Because I was searching on YouTube to see if there were other people that had done it. I can't find a good one. I can find like people doing it with charcoal or painting, but I can't find the drawing one. Okay, so you've probably seen me do this, Doug, but I'll just go through it for the replay if people watch it. So there's a little tree trunk in here, right? And I didn't really draw that in, but I want that in because it's just one of those tiny details that really show off our forest. How rapid move. Yeah, I want to get, you know, the whitewater rapids with also, you know, just the river effect. That's my goal. But again, I get caught up in all the details of it. So I want to come up with just a succinct, easy to follow tutorial that people can match and without it. I think it's going to be hard either way, but I just want to do it in a succinct way. So yeah, so with the sharpened eraser, I'm just going to add in my tree trunk, which is somewhere over here. Oh, there's 2 of them. Yeah, that's good, I think. that slight. It might not even be a tree trunk. It might just be a... Oh, I think that's the top of a tree. So let's have kind of a few branches coming off if we can. I like to really, I sharpen these as well on sandpaper so it gets that little textured end to it. You can sort of erase the texture back in a little. And then we'll just fill in our shadows back in on those outer edges. So there's a little hint of a trunk coming up in the top of that tree. Just little taps though. I don't ever want to, on this, I don't want to just erase like that. Otherwise you're going to mess up. My shaky hand isn't that good. Yeah, it's tough. I get that way too. If I have like a, I don't know, a tea with caffeine in it or something, and then start drawing. Struggling a little bit, but it'll come together here. There we go. This is I'm switching to an HB pencil here. I just want some, oh no, not this again. Must be a bunch of broken lead in here. Okay, we'll try to do it with this 2B pencil. Just some super, I want a little bit of texture in there. There we go, that's not too bad. You can see this is the top of the tree. As that come up. Maybe that's a little better where the graphite isn't reflecting it as much. But sort of just out of those shadows, I'm carving in the top of the tree coming down. And then this tree goes behind this tree, which is then popping out into the light again. And so on and so forth. So top of tree, top of tree, top of tree. And then when you do that over and over again, after a long time, it creates this effect. But in doing it small, one incremental piece at a time, looks like gibberish. My shaky hand isn't that good. My wife says I'm too in redem about my drawings. That came out wrong. Hey, however, if you like drawing, however they turn out, if you're happy with them, that's all that matters. You gotta go. I did. I'm curious to see if I get more done on these lives than working on it for myself, because again, I'll always put the tutorials first. So I'm thinking, even though it'll be as boring, nobody would watch. It'll be super boring, but I'm thinking about just going live like every day in June to finish out this section. The only part I'm nervous about is drawing live up here on the mountain. It takes so much focus that I don't want to miss people's questions, but then I also don't want to get lazy on the drawing either. So I can tell on this section that I did today, I'll probably go back and finesse some of that. But I feel like people probably get bored watching me make little dots. But yeah, so that's the process. This one's still in progress here. Got to fill in the shadows. Do the mountain on your own. Yeah, again, I feel like I always put it on the back burner for myself. I suppose I could do some of this grassy. This is water down here. I haven't shown people that before. So maybe I'll make a point to do that, but maybe these bottom 3 next time or something. Yeah, but I feel like unless somebody has any more questions, that's probably good for the day. Here's what we did today. This little section and these trees, I believe. I think that was it. In 67 minutes. So it's a lot of work to draw realistically. All right. Well, see you next time. This will be replayed. If you watch the full replay and you're still watching right now, comment the word banana hammock. All right, we'll see ya. See you, Doug.